Woodworking Trinidad Limited and Unique Lumber and Construction Guyana Incorporated are premium manufacturers and exporters of high-quality bifolding sliding and pocket door systems, fire-rated doors, windows, operable louver shutters, hardwood floors, staircases, architectural moldings, and toughened laminated glass. Unique Group of companies also supply kiln-dried greenheart, mahogany, cedar, and teak for both residential and commercial projects, locally and regionally. Our logs are cut and shipped by Unique Lumber Guyana and dried in our computerized kiln at our factories facilities in Trinidad. Visit our showrooms to see the quality, which makes us unique.
Darren's Air Conditioning Services. Professional services at affordable prices. They have air conditioning units starting at $2,800 with free delivery, installation, and Wi-Fi ready. We supply Pioneer, Lennox, Comfy, and Infinity, all at unbeatable prices. Servicing of a 12,000 BTU at only $150. Don't forget to check them out on Google, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So contact Darren's Air Conditioning Services at 749-8245. Darren's Air Conditioning Services. Professional services at affordable prices.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. It is Tuesday, February 1st. And tonight, people have been counting down to this show since last week, Thursday. Because last week, Thursday, we promised to have a man on this show that needs little or no introduction. And for different reasons, technical and otherwise, we couldn't make that show happen last week. And he was to be a part of a panel. This week, he promised to be here one-on-one to answer any and all questions and to put information into the public space that people have been waiting to hear. So I give you former Commissioner of Police, former Minister of National Security, Gary Griffith. Good evening, Gary.
Good evening.
Ready to serve?
Good evening, everyone.
You ready for this?
Yep, hit me with the hard stuff.
So we're in a meeting today with two public servants, senior public servants. And one of them asked me to ask you, these people are leaking stories from a report that you have not seen. Why didn't you just respond to every query that I have not seen the report, and until I see the report, I cannot answer?
Okay, sure. This is a carbon copy of the Scott drug report. Whoever were the persons in cabinet, they looked at the playbook and they said, look, this is how it is we have to operate. There was a commissioner of police just around that same time. People in the underworld, the criminal elements, wanted to get rid of him. So they put a report with, it is rumored, it is alleged, hearsay, and then you had rogue police officers being part of giving the report. Stanley John obviously is the biggest dinosaur that they have, that you are a judge and you do not even understand about due process and natural justice. So you sit down now and listen to 3 or 4 police officers, a few of which I found out who they were, and they were the officers who we found out were very instrumental in corruption in the police service as it pertains to firearms. Because I sent my people in there, it is decades this was going on, Phillip. And we knew this. And by me trying to stop the trade, obviously, the same thing happened with Randy Burroughs and so forth. The individuals, they realized we have to get rid of this man. This man is affecting my business. I affected big business of the criminal underworld in the police service of over $100 million per annum in overtime corruption. We had dozens upon dozens of police officers claiming they work 24 hours a day, 30 days a month, and being signed by senior officers who were getting a cut out of it. So an officer supposed to get 10,000, he was getting 60,000. I was able to diminish that by 100 million. But this excuse for Minister of Finance, Colin Imbert, and his lackeys in the ministry have the audacity to say that they wanted to see value for money. But that's another, we'll come to that later on. Likewise, if it is that you have such a report, Stanley John should have known. I don't know if it is that, and I hope to God, as a judge, he didn't operate in the same manner. If it is you get information from one side, you're supposed to contact me, Gary Griffith. This has been brought to my attention. What do you have to say? The man did not even have the common sense or the courtesy to have done that. What has been brought to my attention is that this has also been sent to the National Security Council. And it was stated by a big mouth individual, that being Fitzgerald Hines, the most incompetent security minister in this country's history, who loves to talk. And in talking, he slipped out by admitting that Stanley John gave the document to the NSC. Because these ministers, again, as clueless as they are, believe that the National Security Council is an operational arm or constitutional arm of this country. There is no such thing as the NSC in the Constitution. The NSC is a subcommittee drafted by cabinet to assist in providing funds and so forth for law enforcement, not the direct law enforcement. So we can go to the Blisti Facade, where a member of the NSC said, look, I am senior in the NSC and I'm directing you to withdraw the merit list. But again, that's another story. And Stanley John, instead of contacting me, and I would have explained to him that everything here is total nonsense, because this man, the dinosaur Stanley John, had the audacity to state that I broke a law. Now, thankfully, because he was so clueless to decide to send this to the NSC, it gives me grounds now to take action on him, because he who accused him must prove. And you make a decision on this by the fact that, just let us say, for example, Phillip, that it was true. That, say, for example, a police officer faked a certificate of character to bring it up for me for that person to be eligible to get a FUL. Or he faked a signature for, say, somebody's spouse to get a FUL. And it has me with all the documents to show that this is legit, and I sign it. How could I have broken the law? Unless I was aware that what was there was not legitimate. So for him to, and what is more interesting is this man puts a well-oiled criminal enterprise. So you will think that something of this nature is hundreds of police officers involved, firearm dealers, FUL holders, civilians, senior officers. So far, not one person has been arrested, charged, or convicted. In contrast to 30 persons have already been suspended this year alone by Mr. Jacob. And these police officers being suspended meant they were doing something unauthorized or illegal. Does that mean that Mr. Jacob is to be charged as well because he's the most senior officer? It is as ridiculous as you can get. You can look at the licensing office, because for decades we've heard about corruption in the licensing department. So I guess the transport commissioner and Minister Sinanan should be removed. We've heard about corruption in prison service with prison officers bringing in contraband and illegal items. So that means that the prison commissioners should be charged. We have known for decades, inclusive of you, when I was a minister, where persons were paying for work permits, and the Minister of National Security is the person who signs it after everything comes to his attention. And the list could go on. We see Donna Cox openly admitting the problem pertaining to her ministry, but she now decided to do the right thing by opening the Pandora's box. Are we going to fire Donna Cox because that is still going on? So the ridiculous nature of this is that you have sent a report, and then what was done as usual is that, the final point on this, Phillip, is that Dr. Keith Rowley is the biggest hypocrite that there is. And the reason I will say that is that this man made a statement, and he was correct, when the Integrity Commission made there was a leak of the Integrity Commission pertaining to his files. And rightly so, as a Prime Minister, he said he has serious concerns about leaks, and this must be investigated because this is unprofessional, it is inappropriate, and somebody must pay the price for this, and there must be a thorough investigation launched. Where's the investigation for the leak of the Barrington report to Rhea Tate? Where's the investigation of the leak of the Stanley John report to Dennis Wren? Where's the investigation for the leak of the Ministry of Finance audit to Dennis Wren? Where's the leak of Keith Rowley's text messages to me getting in the hands of the media? Where's the investigation for Keith Rowley's letter sent to me, sent to the PSC, stating he lost confidence in me? Where's the investigation for the leak of the PSC trying to illegally suspend me, but Rhea Tate getting that document and put it on the papers before I even saw it? So all of these leaks are convenient and okay for Keith Rowley. He has no concern with all of these leaks. But the leak of the Integrity Commission, he had a concern with. That is not what you see as a true Prime Minister, as a true leader of the country. He has ethics of convenience.
Gary, your memory. I want to take you to something you said earlier. And I want to ask you for a little more. Because the average person who applies for a firearm user's license that goes through their police station and they get the list of all the things they have to get, the psychological evaluation, and otherwise police come and visit your house, and then they sign off after all of that process and send it forward to head office. What is the process from there? Because it's, people believe when it is signed off that, okay, they're in line to get a FUL, and then that is when it takes years, and it is that length of time. Now, I have heard, most people in the country have heard, and it's long before you ever even considered being a commissioner of police, that the fastest way to get an FUL is to grease the wheels. What is the actual process after it is confirmed at your local police station and forwarded on and recommended? What happens next?
Okay, that is where therein lies the problem. So let us start from there, Philip. The corruption started at the stations to start with, because police officers would have held files for years at the station and not sent it forward to the FUL department for final vetting and signature to the commissioner. So because of that, I made 14 policies. So Stanley John didn't include any of this in his report, quite conveniently, because for decades, no commissioner of police was open to state that there was a problem. No commissioner of police was started telling the public, come forward and report it. No commissioner of police told members of the public, do not pay. No commissioner of police had a proper audit to find out what was going on. No commissioner of police ever put a policy to prevent it. I put 14 policies, and because of that, I stepped on toes. This is the same Randy Burroughs thing. So I stepped on toes. It affected big business in the criminal underworld involving the certain police officers, and it started even from the station. So what I found out is persons were holding back files of certain officers, very few, but they were holding back files and saying, you want this file to go up, you have to fix something, fix my car, do this or whatever. And that was the corruption. So one of the 14 policies was to ensure that when someone makes an application and it goes to a station, you have a timeline. You have a timeline to say that the person is worthy or not. If you don't have any issue, well, then it comes up to the FUL department. Therein lies the 13 other policies I put in place to prevent the corruption. I actually assigned persons in the FUL department to monitor what was going on. And this joker, Stanley John, had the audacity to say that he couldn't understand why Gary Griffith had someone in there. If you are the CEO of a company and you know there's mass corruption on the plant, you will put your people there to find it out. You're not going to sit back and let the same people who are involved in the corruption come to tell you how it is being handled. That man is as clueless as they come. So he had the audacity to say, why did these people come in here? They were upset, those people coming in here to watch, monitor, and I was getting reports of the officers involved. Now, there's a difference between intelligence and evidence. So there wasn't evidence to arrest police officers, but there was enough intelligence to have them removed because they were involved in losing files, misplacing files, trying to bribe persons. And because of that, we moved them. By moving them, these are the same officers run to Stanley John, whisper in his ears, and this man, this joker, decides to put that as a report, and people buy into that. And that is my point. So inclusive of that was also a compliance unit, so that even if a police officer may have forged a certificate of character, given a false certificate of character, even though the person may have a criminal record, the compliance unit will do checks and balances. So if you remember, Dennis Wren, who has written 87 consecutive negative articles about me, expressed shame on you. God, don't eat your shame. And when it is that they put this, the Dennis Wren put a report to say that this man was a criminal and got a firearm. And then I said, that is not true. She said, here's the proof, because it had me sign it. I signed to give clearance based on the police stations. The compliance unit, before it gets out for the book, the compliance unit put a stop and says, sir, look what happened. This man committed a crime from when it is he got his certificate to when it has now come to your desk. We stopped it. He never got it. And those are the things that I did. Additionally, I put the FUL card, which was a chip, and it had a chip on the card because we found out that there were FUL books that could easily be forged. You forge my signature, you give it to a criminal, so the criminal gets in a roadblock, you pull out your book, the book is linked to an illegal weapon, and the police will let you go. These jokers in the hierarchy of the police service decided to scrap the card. They know why they scrapped the card, because the card had the chip to be able to stop corruption. The card will confirm if persons are training with the weapon. The card will confirm if you paid for it. The card will give all the information to prevent mass corruption. So all of these things have been done to prevent it from taking place. What is amazing is that we have a Minister of National Insecurity, Fitzgerald Hines. Just last night, this joker said that legal weapons will also be a matter of concern. Philip, in my 3 years, 6,000 weapons were issued. Over half would have been issued to past and present police officers, fire officers, prison officers, soldiers, sailors, airmen, immigration officers, customs. So people who needed it, which was never done before, to protect them and their family. Additionally, not one was ever lost, not one was ever stolen, not one was used for a crime, not one was used for a murder. 100% of all murders that have taken place by firearms in the last 3 years were by illegal firearms. This Minister of National Security, the man, I have never seen someone so lost in a position like Fitzgerald Hines. This man says, well, you know, we can't tell if the legal firearms have been used to kill anyone because when the person is killed, we don't have witnesses. The man doesn't understand that every legal firearm goes through ballistic testing. So if someone is killed through the ballistic testing, they will be able to pinpoint that that weapon used, that round used to kill this person through the forensic testing will be able to pinpoint that the weapon of that legal firearm holder was the weapon that he used. So Fitzgerald Hines didn't even understand the ballistic testing. So he tried to say, well, maybe legal firearms have been used to kill someone. Facts are, because every legal weapon has been tested, it means that anytime any person has been murdered and you do the autopsy, you will be able to verify. The man didn't even know that. But you have spent more time trying to deal with the concern of legal firearms that can be used to protect law-abiding citizens. And now you're trying to prevent it, to hold it back, and to even take it back, whilst the main concern that you have not touched would be illegal firearms.
Kid Rowley said there are 40,000 illegal weapons in the country. That was in he said 37,000 in 2017. They upgraded to 40,000. So that's years again before you became commissioner of police. How do those weapons get into the country?
Well, right. And again, it shows that this government has lied, deceived, and misled the country, because in their manifesto in 2015, they promised and spoke about a border protection unit. They did nothing because, again, none of them have any ability or training in national security or law enforcement, so they didn't know what to do. I, as the commissioner and being a previous minister, I knew what to do. I drafted it, I showed them it, I showed them the plans to set up a border protection unit. Because, you know, the concept that the PNM till are dead is that they come, oh God, they shut down, they cancel the OPV. The OPV foolish people had nothing to do with securing your borders between Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago. The offshore patrol vessel are vessels that are of that size and nature to secure your exclusive economic zone. When Patrick Manning was purchasing these vessels, it was to secure the pipeline that they were planning from Trinidad all the way up to Jamaica. So that is what those vessels for. You're not going to use vessels of that magnitude that is supposed to go out for weeks on end to go between waters that is just surrounded by landmass between the mainland and Trinidad and Tobago by a few miles. So what you use are interceptors and medium-range vessels, which is why I set up what would have been known as a three-tiered approach. The first tier is interceptors from the shoreline to 2 miles out. The second tier will be between 2 miles to 10 miles. That is where you have the damming vessels that we bought. And the third tier will be from 10 miles to 200 miles, which is your exclusive economic zone, which is what the OPVs would have been there for. So when it is they speak about the OPVs being cancelled, the average PNM teller that speaks about the OPV, I challenge any of them anytime. And by the way, I ask everyone to type BAE/corruption, and you will see 17 countries sued BAE, who are the ones that were supposed to give us those vessels, by paying kickbacks to government officials, inclusive of Australia, United Kingdom, and the other dozens of other countries. So, but that is where it is they had the concern. So the point being is that when it is that you have the problem with illegal firearms, a very small percentage, Philip, comes from that illegal port of entry that being Venezuela to the mainland. That is perception to try to keep talking at OPV nonsense, because very few weapons come from the mainland. In Venezuela, you're talking about muskets and very old weapons. The sophisticated type of assault weapons that we get here do not come, very few, if any, come from the mainland. I am speaking about expertise we have and intelligence from our international allies. I'm not old talking. The bulk of the illegal weapons come from the legitimate ports of entry. And the legitimate ports of entry, I'll give you an example, where the police will seize about 1,000 firearms a year, roughly, between 800 to 1,000. So we can seize about 10,000 firearms in 10 years. But the fact of the matter is that one container leaving the port unchecked can have 10,000 firearms. So what you would have done for 10 years would have been lost in one night. And that is because we have an ineffective system of border control on our legitimate ports of entry, because several containers go missing from our ports annually that we can't account for. So all it takes is one customs officer, one steward, one driver, one person by the guard boot, They all work at the same time and a container gets out and 10,000 weapons get out. I showed the Prime Minister, I showed Minister Young, this is the draft, this is the plan. It is not going to happen because of lack of political will and common sense how to get it done. Until this government is removed, we will continue to have the problems of illegal guns entering the country. And it is a simple process. It involved amalgamation of defense force, police, customs, immigration, similar to what you see in other places in North America and Europe. So you have the guards guarding the guards. So because you're going to have corrupt police, corrupt customs, corrupt immigration, corrupt defense force, you have all of them in a unit, polygraphed every 2 months, making sure. And then you have covert operatives in the port, monitoring everything. That will, if it is we put a stop to the illegal guns entering, we can then put focus on the illegal guns that are already here. So this nonsense about trying to clean up the weapons that are already here, you're spinning top in mud because you're pulling out 1% that here, and then over 10 times of what you seize in a year could come in one night.
And containers leaving the port to go to importers' destination, residences, warehouses, business places, and customs meeting them there to open the container. Are we unstuffing containers on the port yet? Are we examining containers on the port yet? Are we scanning for weapons and drugs?
No, because remember there was a scanner there, and then after the certain persons in the Port Authority claimed that because of radiation, which shows the importance of why sometimes you do privatization of ports around the world to prevent these things if it is that the union workers have a concern with. So you have a scanner that could monitor these things on the containers. It is not being done. We're supposed to have proper systems. I, as the commissioner at the time, met with the chief police commissioner in Miami-Dade to deal with, because the majority of the illegal weapons come from Miami and New York. So I met with those persons. I formed a relationship with Twin Trinidad and Tobago Police Service with NYPD. Since I left, that has been shut down. So intelligence gathering, share, and training and so forth, because most of the illegal weapons will be coming from North America, more so the Port of Miami. Now, anything that enters the Port of Miami is checked down to a matchstick. You will be able to, they will know what is coming in. What goes out, they don't care. So if someone throws 10,000 firearms in a container and headed into Trinidad, the Port of Miami is not going to check that. That is not their business. What goes out is not their concern. What comes in is their concern. And we're supposed to do the same thing, but we don't. So if it is, we need to, I tell you, listen, Phillip, we can make Trinidad and Tobago safe again. I didn't say great again. Huh? I said we can make Trinidad and Tobago safe again. And the way to do that is to deal with illegal weapons entering the country. Fitzgerald Hines has spent more time. He spends 90% of his time speaking about legal firearms and how great the PNM is. Every time he speaks, he has to thumb the PNM. The man is a politician. That is it. There are places for people like that. Not in a ministry of that magnitude. Because sometimes you might have a minister that might be so politically oriented. He might decide to tell a commissioner, I want this constable to be in charge of the intelligence division of the police service who intercepts phones. And that commissioner might tell that minister, the man is a constable. Why are you doing that? Because he's a good friend of mine, Gary. He's a good friend of mine. And I want this man in charge. And he's the person that must be dealing with all the interception of emails, phones, and so forth. When you have somebody like that, that could become so political and trying to direct a commissioner of police how to appoint people, instead of putting focus on the issue, illegal firearms and the problems that cause crime to increase 100% since I left, that is when this crime will go haywire. Before Fitzgerald Hines and before my departure, the first 7 months of the year last year, which would be my last 7 months, we were getting between 25 to 30 murders per month. So we were going at 350 murders per annum. Since I left, since Fitzgerald Hines has taken over, it has moved from 30 a month to 60 odd a month. So we've moved from 350 odd per annum to 700 per annum from my last 7 months to the last 5 months since I'm not there. But we have people stating there's not a spike in crime, and we have an acting commissioner of police stating that he doesn't see that as a concern because he does what is known as trend analysis. Wow.
You speak about Fitzgerald Hines more than you speak about the acting commissioner of police. That acting commissioner of police did not make it to the merit list. On what was he appointed?
Well, he applied for deputy commissioner of police. By applying as deputy commissioner of police, he was appointed as a substantive deputy commissioner of police. And then, this whole thing with that merit list, not one member of the media have ever asked the Prime Minister Stuart Young, who was acting, he got a little 10-day work as the AG when the substantive AG was not in the country. And mere hours before the substantive AG landed, he rushed to do a cabinet note to state that they will form a new legal notice to scrap the merit list. There has been absolutely no reason why this was done. And not one member of the media have asked them, why did you do a legal notice to scrap the last merit list? Because there was nothing wrong with it. All the bacchanal, the confusion had to do with Bliss Prasad operating in an illegal manner, listening to politicians and doing the wrong thing. The merit list was done, sealed, and delivered way before this bacchanal took place. So no one has really asked about that. Jacob did apply as commissioner, I think, in 2018. And he acquired 65% to my 82%. So the man realized, listen, it makes no sense for me to reapply because obviously Gary will get more points than me again. The same, the two highest police officers after me, I got 94.8%. They acquired 77 and 75%. One is a DCP at this time. So the fact is, I could always apply and I will always get the same, I will always come first. But would the government continue to abuse the process? This system, Philip, what we are seeing here is a perfect example of democratic dictatorship, where a government is using the constitution, which is flawed legally, to abuse it and to show total dictatorship. Because what we have in our constitution is that I am in government, I am going to handpick the Speaker of the House. I will handpick the President of the Senate, and they will manipulate the Parliament proceedings for the next 5 years without and show blatant bias, and there's nothing that could be done. I am going to handpick the President, who she will just rubber stamp. If I say I do not like a merit list, I will just do a legal notice to scrap it, and she will stamp it. I will handpick a commissioner of police of who I want, and if he does not operate to how I want him to operate, which is to try to go and arrest opposition MPs, I will change him and get somebody else who would listen to me. I will handpick a chief of defense staff. I will handpick the police service commission to select who I want. The only way that constitution could change is not by the governments who we have seen in the last few decades, because the governments have come and gone. And when you're in opposition, you are concerned about the abuse and the dictatorship because of the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, the selection process for the President, the Commissioner. But then when you get in government, you bask and you enjoy that dictatorship, and you do not want to change it. Even Kamala Prasad Bissessa, she blew the trumpet about 2 terms and the right for recall. Not a thing was done. Until we have a proper government that really and truly cares about the country, we need a government, Philip, that will change the constitution to reduce the powers of the government. And again, going back to even Stuart Young, another thing he also did was deliberately change the format and the procedure for the acting commissioner of police, because I was also number 1 on that. And he changed it to state that the only people who can act as commissioner of police must be serving police officers. So the government did 2 amendments deliberately to ensure that I would not top the merit list as it was already there, and to ensure I would not act. And not one person in the media have asked them why.
What redress you have for that? What redress exists for that obvious bias? Is there any channels in this country that allows for you to raise this matter before an independent, for want of a better word, tribunal or any sort of organization that can weigh in on this outside possibly of the courts?
There's only one, because how it is drafted, Stuart Young knew what he did. You draft a legal notice to change how the acting commissioner could be appointed, because I would have been number 1 again, and you draft something to scrap the merit list without any reason, and because you handpick the president, she rubber stamps it without realizing what is the justification to scrap a merit list that was good. So they took the powers away from this PSC. And by the president making that decision, you can't take the president to court. So they knew what they did, which goes to my point of democratic dictatorship. And that is what we have to move. So there's nothing that could be done because of our constitution that makes this is a dictatorial government, and not because of this government, but because of the constitution, because of our laws. And the only way it could change is if it is that the government changes, and you have a government that is willing to diminish the powers of a government, as it happens around the world. We're supposed to have a president that must be independent and impartial and not handpicked by a government, so that she will not do what she did. This lady she did not adhere to the law. The law stated that when she got the merit list, she must send it to Parliament. She refused. only in a banana republic would have someone stay as a president after this. This woman refused to adhere to the law by not sending the merit list to parliament. She knew very well that by not doing that, it would have allowed Adam Ramlogan now the opportunity to take it to court, because for me to have acted as commissioner of police, she had to take it to parliament. She did not. So this was her actions ensured that Anand did what happened. And it was the first time Keith Rowley and Anand Ramlogan ended up in bed together, because the two of them had the same agenda to have me removed as commissioner of police. So Keith Rowley don't ever bad talk Anand Ramlogan again, because you went in bed with Anand Ramlogan to have me removed.
When the merit list goes forward, what is the next step? Is it automatic confirmation of the top person, or does the parliament or the government still have a say who becomes commissioner?
No, that is it. The government can decide. The person could be number 5 on the merit list. And let me go back to even myself in 2018. I got the highest points of all who applied for commissioner of police, 82%. Stephen Williams came second with 76%. Jacob was way down. By the time we crossed the finish line, he was still coming around the bend. So he came place about 8th or 9th. What happened then is that the then PSC, who were appointed by the UNC, who did not vote for me, so see how it goes. So the UNC, who did not support me to be commissioner in 2018, they were the ones who handpicked that previous PSC. And that previous PSC decided on themselves, look, so there were 8 exams, mock media conference, essays, interviews, final interviews, oral tests, several different exams. I topped every single one, beat every single person who applied, got the most amount of points. And then the PSC said, okay, so Gary Griffith came first. We don't like this. We are going to do our own exam. They did their own, and I still came first. And then they said to themselves, okay, we are the PSC. We don't have to listen to the points. So they decided to place me fourth. That is what we call dictatorial democracy, where they disregarded all the points, and they decided to say to themselves, look, we don't care that Gary Griffith plays first. Based on our personal feeling, we're going to put Dulal Shan first. And Dulal Shan didn't even apply for the post. So that is where it is you talk about abuse of authority, where politicians can handpick persons in so-called independent institutions, and then they could do the bidding or just make decisions without any care or concern of any reprisal, because I am a PSC, I'm independent. So Gary Griffith topped the merit list, got the most amount of points, we're going to place him fourth. And then the government said, look, you seen this? We feel Gary Griffith is the man for the job. Now, certain people may have selected me thinking that Gary Griffith is going to be some sort of a vindictive individual that will go after their political opponents. Wrong guy. That is not me. It wasn't me in 2014 when there was an attempt, 2015, when there was an attempt to try to manipulate me to do the wrong thing. It's certainly not the guy that, because of what the UNC did, I intended to use my authority to victimize anyone. I am very fair, I'm very impartial, I'm very independent, and I could not be controlled by any politician. And therein lies the problem. And a quick point on that, Philip, when people speak about, well, Gary, they had no right to have spoken to the Prime Minister like that. I would send a video to you. One of about 24 police chiefs in the United States told President Trump to shut up, because he would have been making comments that was causing serious problems that was affecting police chiefs around the United States in the situation during the Black Lives Matter movement. And this is the most powerful man in the world. And police chiefs they knew their place as an independent body, that regardless of you being the president, you are saying and doing something that is wrong. And Mr. President, please shut up. But in this country, the banana republic attitude, how dare you speak to Keith Rowley and tell him that? Well, you know that I don't work for Keith Rowley. I work for the state. They are two different things. I swear an oath to my God, the country, and the people of this country. And if a prime minister does something or says something that can cause police officers to commit acts that can infringe on your constitutional rights, I would intervene and I would prevent it. Because had I not done so, we would have had a repeat of 2011, where hundreds of young men were arrested because we had a naive police service led by individuals who listened to politicians. I had no intention for history to repeat itself.
So you are saying then that the Prime Minister's actions precipitated your response?
Of course. By him making a public statement, the very next day, The Guardian stated Rowley buffs Gary over the situation in Bayside. And Keith Rowley, he's bright. He knows exactly what this had nothing to do with him, my removal, or them not wanting me back. had nothing to do with Bayside. But the logic is, listen, if it is that we put it out to say Gary Griffith not locking up white people, it will give us support on the masses and it could justify why I didn't want to support Gary. But let me tell the public something. This was the same man that March last year, told the AG to amend the law for me to act as Commissioner of Police. I challenge Keith Rowley to say that I'm a liar today, when in that same March of last year, he told Cabinet if he could get 10 Gary Griffiths, he could clean up this country because of all the problems that the country was getting. However, when it is that he started seeing certain things and Gary Griffith was not singing to a certain tune, that is where you remove Gary Griffith. And you try to use the red herring of the Bayside matter by throwing, I lost confidence in Gary Griffith. Any prime minister that is worth his salt would measure a commissioner of police by the fact of when he arrived, public confidence and trust was 14%. It went to 44% when I left. My God, now it's probably less than 10% again. You will look at the crime statistics. When it is that I was as Commissioner of Police, in my last 18 months, there were 200 less murders than the 18 months before. There were 140 less murders in my last full year than the year before. In my last 7 months, we were going at a ratio of 350. It was the highest reduction in every single crime in 17 years in this country. And since I left, there's been a spike of 350 per annum to 700 per annum. That is what a prime minister would look at. You look at public belief. Over 85 to 89% wanted me to return or had no concern of me returning. You look at the meritless points and you look at his assessment points. We have the 77 policies. Everyone was good or very good. The only one that was fair was my taking criticism from the media. I thought I got pretty high for that, in fact. So when it is that you look, that is what a prime minister that is level-headed will do. Not personalize a matter and say, I do not care if it is that crime goes up. I do not care what the public says. I do not care that the commissioner is independent. It is what I want. Me. And you see, that attitude, that is not what we want of a prime minister.
I'm going to stray a little bit because you keep taking us down a political road. People WhatsApping me to ask you certain questions. So I'm going to have to stray a little bit. Are you, at any point in time, do you have the intention at any point in time to get involved in the political landscape of the country?
It is very possible, Philip. As I said, I don't need a job. Unlike certain persons, the PN, so many PNM fanatics and UNC, two things they love based on lack of vocabulary. He's a puppet and he looking for a walk. Unlike some of them, I don't need a job. The only reason I applied for this position was because of what I saw was going on with the police service and I knew it needed to change. And the only reason I reapplied was because Keith Rowley changed the law for me to act and the public stated that over 89% wanted me to return. That is the only reason. I ended up in the hospital twice, working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you have persons, despicable individuals who call themselves reporters, trying to attack an 18-year-old young man and my son because of who I am. When you have individuals like that, I don't have to sleep good at night, where all they speak about is to attack, destroy, discredit individuals. That is sad. I feel sorry for them. And then they have a few supporters who will watch them online. That your whole life is to attack and destroy people. So the point of the matter, Philip, is that I don't need to have my family frustrated, attacked, my son being targeted, and affected my health. The only reason I did it was for my country. So the same reason I made the decision to be a minister, to be commissioner of police, was based on the demand and the reason for people saying, Gary, we would like you to do this. There have been many polls that have been taking place throughout on stations and so forth. 60% order telling me to go to replace Keith Rowley, which is not difficult. I wish this country had something mano a mano, and I will beat him 2-1 right now. But it's not. It's based on politics, and people will circle around the political wagon regardless of who's in charge and regardless of the facts. I could 30% order have been telling me to return as commissioner of police because they've seen what is happening now in the country. 10% are telling me I should go to hell. So I mean, it's really for my family, for me to pray and for me to decide what it is I need to do. As I said, it's nothing that I must do, that I want. But if it is that it takes being a part of being political to try to help this country, I know we can fix this country. We can fix this country if we have a good government with good people who really care about serving the country, not putting your position as a minister of finance and then you put an audit, and then you leak an audit with full of lies, but you didn't want to speak about certain things that you directed me to do, which I will speak about at a later date, putting it to over $35 million to go specifically towards political opponents. When that marks start a bus, we'll talk.
You can give a little more information, you know.
Not yet.
On that.
On that.
Police Complaints Authority, is it functional?
It is. Again, this was the only commissioner of police that ever respected the PCA, that gave them some degree of recognition. Before that, Stephen Williams didn't care, which is why people will report matters to the PCA. The PCA will write to the police service, and the police just would not take them on because they saw the PCA as a thorn, as obstructive, as who you feel you are. You're a civilian, which is a bad mentality by certain senior police officers. They see civilians as being, you're not a police officer, you can't tell me what to do. Whereas in other countries, it is different. You bring specialists who are highly qualified in certain fields, whether it is DNA testing, intelligence gathering, IT, forensics, and so forth. But that is where it is. I was trying to change the mindset of the police service. So, but what you wanted in depth on that with PCA, I have tried and I have worked with the PCA.
No, because I wanted to ask you, the current head of the PCA.
Yeah.
No, if you want to finish it, go ahead.
Well, no, the only concern I had with the PCA is that at a time where we are pushing documents and files of reports of actual crime, the PCA they will do a full page ad to tell people, if you all have any information pertaining to a crime of legal firearms, please report it to us so that we can investigate. Have you ever heard an agency that is supposed to investigate crime telling people, well, we have no victims, we have no witnesses, we have no evidence, we have a lot of rumor and rum shop talk. So because of that, come to us to make a report so that we can start to investigate. That is mind-boggling.
Do you think it was a conspiracy? Do you think that they began with your head inside, that they wanted, there was a Get Gary campaign, Stanley John was used? Do you believe that the Express, all of this is a conspiracy? Somebody wrote me and asked me, with all the other things going on in the country of such significant importance, why is the Sunday headline week after week concerned about Gary and nobody else taking this on?
I'll tell you why, Philip. The PNM government is mortified of Gary Griffith. When it is that they started getting the polls showing that 89% of our country supporting one individual, that has never happened before. I remember Sadiq Bar said that they do heavy polls, data mine and everything. And they said the only time anyone got over 80% national support at any time was Wendy Fitzwilliam, and which was about 81, and myself now is about 85%. That obviously will diminish somewhat if I go political. But the point being is that when certain politicians saw that, they realized that this individual, if Winston Dukaran could take 147,000 third constituency voters to form a political party of substance, that end result caused the PNM's demise in 2010 when they joined with somebody else. They started doing the maths. If Winston could take 147, Gary could easily get 200. If Gary gets 200, it could affect us. So their concept was, look, we have to destroy the credibility of Gary Griffith, not just stop him from being commissioner. That could have been easy by you'd be in government. They had to put a witch hunt and a campaign to try to discredit me at all costs. What happened, unfortunately, it backfired because the Barrington report, this fellow Barrington was a special branch officer whose last few years was to collect a suitcase at JFK when ministers arrived at the airport. So the last time he probably held a gun, he couldn't remember. This man does a report. It is alleged, it is rumored, and I have heard. Take that, send it to the NSC, who then leak it to Rear Teeth. Then they hire Stanley John. Then you tell the president, or the president decides not to send the merit list. You then direct Plessy Prasad, go and collect the merit list and bring it back. You then appoint Stanley John, who then speaks to police officers involved in corrupt activity, who will then come and whisper to you, and you put that as a report, and then it is leaked to Dennis Wren. You then have Keith Rowley's report to the PSC being leaked. Then you have Colin Inbert deciding to have something from the Ministry of Finance, deciding of nobody else you're auditing, but only Gary Griffith and only the police service in my period, and then litter it with total misinformation that is unbelievable. I know they have some golden girls there in the Ministry of Finance. Some of them probably still using A-Track and Betamax, so they don't understand proper forensic testing when it comes to dealing with auditing. So their concept is straightforward. So they look and say, well, look, Gary Griffith was breaking up procurement regulations. If it is you have a marine branch and you have 3 different type of vessels, well, you can't use the same procedure for all 3 vessels. It's different vessels, so there'll be a different procurement, even though it is the marine branch has been formed. So what they spoke about is total nonsense, and this also was conveniently leaked to Dennis Wren. So this was a hatchet job they deliberately has designed in the hope that if we could discredit Gary, we could bring him down. If he decides to go political, he would not be able to pull that 3rd constituency. But let me tell you something, Philip. In 1991, that 3rd constituency under ONR was 91,000 odd, 90,000. In 1991, the NAR as a 3rd constituency got 127,000. In 2007, the COP on its own as a 3rd constituency got 147,000. 15 years later, which means that persons between 18 to 33 years old who are now eligible to vote never had an option of a 3rd party. When you do the maths of those persons between 18 and 33, you're getting another 150, 200,000 odd, plus the 147,000, plus more people disenchanted with both sides. You're speaking of a 3rd constituency out there of easily over 350,000 this time around. There was a big concern that Gary Griffith can be the catalyst to circle the wagons and bring all these people together. Because one of the biggest issues with the 3rd constituency, Philip, as you should know, is ego. Hey, we could do this, but not Philip Alexander. Yeah, we could go with Philip, but not with Incheon. Yeah, we could go with Incheon, but not with Kirkwood. Yeah, we could go with Kirkwood, but not with this. And that is what goes on. It becomes personalities because you don't have a base that you focus on based strictly on race or religion. So what you have is a 3rd constituency of independent thinkers, and the hardest thing is to build a team. The PNM believes that I have the capability and the charisma to bring that together, and that is why their job is to try to destroy me at all costs.
If you want to ask your question to Gary Griffith, WhatsApp it to me on 682-2110. I'll read your questions. If you want your name called, I'll call your name so that Gary knows who's asking the question. Today in that conversation, we were talking because I was doing some prep work, and of course, people have this idea that are unite all the opposition, and you beat the PNM, and that's a fact. Every time everybody who is in opposition unites, it beats the PNM. But I had to explain to somebody today who came out of the belly of the PNM. I said, when you look at what is going on right now, a lot of these parties, the NAR, who's Arthur Napoleon, Raymond Robinson, and Carlton Phillips, both of them came out of the PNM. The UNC that put Pandey in office, Ish Steve Bryan, they were PNM people. The PNM knows that as long as they sow discord among the brethren, they win. So the point that you just raised there is the ease with which, and your good friend, our research officer, Anne-Marie Dulal, she says that the PNM is brilliant at bringing the noise. They're brilliant at attacking your character, assassinating you, assassinating my character, or to create spaces in the conversation where you and I can't line up and work together, or any of the others. And that is what they're good at. The question now is, how do we ignore that noise? How do we ignore the gang up for gang up's sake and actually build something that can transcend the politics of noise that we have had? Because a lot of these organizations that you mentioned before that won government didn't last. They planned for the wedding and they had no plan for the marriage. So there was nothing going forward. How do we put in place the right people without, as you say, ego, who want a better country, to make this happen so that the people of Trinidad and Tobago who are crying out for a change could have something to vote for? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, the 2 points you brought up there, Philip. The first one, I just want to deal with quickly. That is the PNM's mantra. They've never had the ability to say, look, let us develop, let us build, let us do something good for the country. Their job has always been, let us find a way to lock up the opposition. Let us find a way to destroy, to attack, because they're good at that. Then again, you watch your country. A man who is a political leader put something called email gate. And my 7-year-old nephew was looking and realizing that this thing was not true. But the PNM knows that if you have the same line, you say it over and over, you will get persons to believe it. So you put something called email gate and people bought into that. Somebody decides to drop some weed outside the opposition leader house where 70 people were running around. oh, they should lock her up. That is what they live on. That's what that is their DNA, to find a way. So they are look at Gary Griffith. They have instead of trying to govern the country, this PNM have spent more time trying to destroy Gary Griffith. Every Sunday Express, through the PNM controlling the Express on a Sunday, to find something to attack Gary Griffith and using Rhea Tate and Dennis Ren as their mouthpieces. And but the country is not being fooled. The country has now become wiser. Only the PNM till are dead, and it's very limited. That same front page with the Ministry of Finance, with that nonsense they put about wild spending. Not one comment was made negative of me on CCN, on that same Sunday Express article. People are not buying it. So the PNM's desperate attempt of trying to look, we have to find more time to lock up the opposition or to destroy their character. They spend more time trying to bring people down to their level. We must do bigger than that. We must be better than that. And that is where what I speak about comes in, Philip. It is going to be very difficult because I have spoken to thousands of persons, and the first thing they say, oh, yeah, I will do it. Let's do this, but not this one, not that one. People need to calm down and understand that because you're in a third constituency, you might be bright, you might have passion. Then you'll hear, we can't bring anybody over 60. We must only bring young people. And then, so everybody has a voice, everybody has a view. We need to find persons that would be willing to embrace this, have the charisma and the understanding to say, look, let us put everyone together. Everybody is entitled to an opinion, but let us stop trying to, as soon as you start to divide and conquer and cut. We were able to do it with the COP. And that's how we got the 147,000. But as I said, that was in 2007. The numbers continue from, as I said, 81,000 to 127 to 147. So easily it is between 200 to probably 300 plus right now. That now sends a serious sign to both political parties that, listen, there's a new wave that can be on the horizon. There could be a major, and we need transformation in this country. We need a national transformation movement to get the best minds together, not persons who, what is smiling at? Not persons who who feel that they're going in it for themselves. How you could listen, I would not put Fitzgerald Hines to do anything. How could you put an individual like that in Ministry of National Security? The man, every time he speaks, he does not have a clue what he is saying. He is totally lost, and every single thing in his mind. When you have a minister that goes in a police headquarters and goes on in between the Commissioner of Police and the Commissioner of Prisons and Balls, great is the PNM. We are a great party and we will come again. It shows the man's whole DNA is only politics. So he is going to make decisions and probably, unfortunately, use Ministry of National Security resources towards a political nature, which is very dangerous in this country. This government cannot last and should not last till 2025 with those type of individuals in strategic positions. And that's why I say that it is time that we need to understand, there's a saying that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Having all of these different small units and organizations and activist groups, it may be time that we need to get the best minds together and really care about the country. Because sometimes when you have the 41 members of parliament, some of them is because they don't have a job. They can't do anything and nobody really wants them. We need to find the best persons. And a final point on that is one of the things that I speak about is, as I said, apart from having a government that is willing to diminish the powers of a government, but we put 41 members of parliament to go up. And then when you win 23, 25, 27 seats, you now have to fit in square pegs in round holes to put them in ministries where they do not have a clue. Nothing against Shamfa Kujo. She boasted that she never kicked a lime in her life. You have Minister Fitzgerald Hines, who for 30 years managed animals on OJT because he knew he wasn't ready. And now you put him in the third most important ministry in the country.
He is the most fired politician in the history of politics in Trinidad. Fitzgerald Hines has been fired more than anybody else from every position. He was fired twice from the Senate.
Yeah, and that is who you put as a security minister. Now, granted, I think the game plan is that because I at the time as Commissioner of Police, I became the mouthpiece on the front of national security. So there was a concern about illegal borders, about the problems with the prisons. The media will be calling Gary Griffith and Hines will just stay in the background and say nothing. So that was his instruction. Now that I left, he's forced to speak because Jacob says very little as well. So now by the both of them speaking, things are being exposed, not from a positive light. But again, it goes back to the point of what you spoke about, Philip. It may be time to circle the wagons and for us to find the best persons. And my point was, when you select these members of parliament, you then try to fit them in as a minister where they do not have the capability. We should not be doing that. for a member of parliament who goes up for a seat, your job is a glorified councillor. We should have, when you are a member of parliament and you win your seat, your main job is to be looking after the constituents in your constituency. Ask Keith Rowley when last he ever walked his constituency. He has never done it. But he did not tell him Imbert. Imbert boasted. And as a slap in the face to the constituents in Diego Martin Northeast, he did not even bother to walk because he knew he was going against Gavin Nicholas. That shows blatant disrespect. You can't have people like that. They are your member of parliament first, minister after. They do just the opposite. Everyone who becomes a minister, they spend 95% of their week in their ministry because that's where the perks are, that's where you get all the driver and the fancy thing. And to sit down to hear a man say that he needs water, they need better drainage, they need roads. That is not my business because I am a minister. And therein lies the problem. We need to have a government that will understand your members of parliament, any of them who win their seats, your focus is to deal with the concerns of the citizens in your constituency. And then probably get the 15 best minds to be in the upper house as ministers in the Senate to deal with it and have the best persons qualified in the fields of national security, education, health, sport, economy, and so forth.
I'm going to answer the questions as I get them, right? I'm gonna avoid the obvious ones that calling to lord you up and make you feel nice. Question for Gary Griffith from Stephen. During your tour of duty, did any politician, both UNC or PNM, come directly to you or your office to fast-track any firearms for themselves or family?
Many, and mostly from the PNM government, and as high as you could go as well. I'm going to start a bus mark on that. People will understand why it is that Gary Griffith, every single file that was brought to me, I got at least 10 to 20 letters a day from people asking for a status report on their FUL. It is my job to send it. I see firearm, FYI, status please, and I will send it. If it is somebody of a senior nature comes to me and they've asked for a firearm, there's nothing wrong with that. What I wouldn't do, if at any time as a commissioner, I ask, well, let me get 2 bus route past there, minister, or let me get, that is a difference, that is corruption. But if it is that ministers will ask, or people in the opposition or the business sector or the chambers ask for firearms, what is the status? Because it has not been dealt with for years because of failure by previous commissioners to do their job. That is the point. They did not do their job. I did my job. There were 50,000 applicants, only 6,000 were approved. We still have 44,000 out there. And this Minister of National Insecurity has a concern. So yes, many very senior government officials contacted me on a regular basis for status report or to help them with firearms for themselves or for their friends.
Rhoda Barrett did some quick arithmetic. Said $50,000 for $50,000 for FUL, 50,000 applicants, and $250 million.
Why she didn't multiply the 20,000 by 12 every year she was getting from NLCB? And how did she get that job? And was she qualified? And how and what did she provide NLCB with?
That makes
she
the point. But that makes
and
the point.
Colin should also explain how it is she got that job. Do an audit on that as well, Ingrid.
But
Listen,
that makes
since I was in CIC Fed, which is the best school in Trinidad, and I did that thing about how they spell Dwen. Since that time, that man didn't like me, and I still can't spell Dwen. It's still IMBERT.
But that is how the PNM does the dirty work. They send people to just say just enough, and their trolls will say the other half of the equation. So the other half sue both of them, and they go to
So Rhoda Borat, what she has done, right? So Ms. Borat, what she did, she does the maths and adds it up. So she knows that every single person who applied for a firearm had to pay $50,000. I mean, she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. We obviously realize what she's about. But, you know, again, we have to feel sorry for people like that. When all that you do is try to destroy, attack, not once she can ever say, well done, thank you to anyone. Everything you do in your career as a so-called journalist is to try to see what you could do to destroy, attack, and discredit people. That is sad. I feel sorry for them. And I feel sorry for the 50-odd people who follow her on Facebook. It is very sad when you have an individual like that. I really do pray for her.
No, but it's ridiculous what the media is allowed to get away with in Trinidad. And that's something else we need to deal with, because at some point we need, but I mean, traditional media is itself dying, so you had to wait it out at some point. The Express on their front page. What is their readership now? I remember when they had 50 vans distributing Express papers in the morning, I was one. What's their readership? Please ask Gary if he believes the fact that he was continuing the investigation into the fake oil fiasco even after the government failed to appeal the case was one of the reasons for his dismissal.
I would like to believe there's some input in that, because when I made the statement that what decision was made in court has nothing to do with the police investigation, there was a reason for that, because the investigation was still ongoing and he had damning information to justify that this investigation was very alive, to the point that all that was missing, and I continue to speak to the government because the police did our investigation looking at how much oil, how much you're claiming in comparison to how much could be injected into that well. And then when we did the maths and we looked at it, it didn't add up. So when we said to make sure before we move further with the investigation, we needed a qualified engineer to deal with it. And then but obviously the police service wouldn't have those type of funds for those special projects. I kept asking the government for the funds and they refused to forward it to me. I kept saying I need the engineer qualified for me to move forward to complete what we believe that what we have seen in the investigation. I kept pushing it. Now that I have gone, I am sure that door and that investigation is going to be closed.
Are you saying the government obstructed the course of justice?
Of course, but if it is that there's a police investigation and we need something to assist us to continue the investigation to verify if a crime was committed, and I'm asking you for the resources and the funds available and you refuse, it means that you have not assisted the police in completing an investigation. That is a fact of what happened with AV drilling.
Somebody want to know, do you fear for your life knowing what you know and all that kind of question? You want to answer that kind of question?
Well, yeah, but listen, there were 27 death threats on Gary Griffith when I was commissioner of police. So it wouldn't be the first, it wouldn't be the last. It goes with the territory. I know, again, even going back to, strange enough, I will have less concern with the criminal underworld because they have a lot of respect for me. They know that I never abuse my authority. And again, this is when you have the ignorant PNM till dead. Gary Griffith shouldn't be commissioner because of what happened with Andrea Barrett murderers. So you have someone, instead of commending the commissioner that we were able to apprehend the 2 individuals who raped and killed, who raped over 77 charges, that killed an innocent young lady, but you decide to blame the commissioner of police because what 2 other officers may have done. That again shows the type of what it is we have to go through in this country, Phillip.
Somebody...
My concern is not the criminal elements, but sometimes it's those, it suits, or even in uniform.
The Thursday night, last week Thursday, well, I mean, I know you were in transit. You got any time to watch Robin Montano's part of the interview where he basically said he knows the name of the corporal in the police service that pulled the trigger that killed his cousin and no action was ever taken and no justice was ever...
No, I was in the air, but I have heard about that report once or twice.
What is the outcome? I'm going to ask you a question that caused an argument on my page with you and 2 of my followers for about 3 days. What is the outcome of the children shooting guns in Kamuto that was promised before the last LGA? This is what brings a perception of equity in the eyes of the public.
Well, again, my job wasn't there to try to satisfy PNM haters or to try to satisfy those people who might be a UNC till a dead or Pep or whoever. That is not my job. People felt Gary is there. Gary was a UNC, he will bust PNM truth. Gary was a UNC, Gary was appointed by the PNM, he will lick up the UNC. That is not my style. And I could not do that. You have to look at everything on its merit. But you know what we do have? We have plenty Mannix and Ironside and plenty James Bond. Everybody.
You're showing your age. Pick something more current.
No, parents told me to use that. Those names. Kojak. But because it was Faris Alwari, the first thing is say, right, this happened to him, so Gary have to charge them. You don't do that. You don't charge people in Bayside because of the color of their skin, Kitrol. You charge people if they break the law. So likewise in this situation, when we looked at the information, we had hundreds of photos for decades of children going to what was known as Defense Force caravans, police community programs throughout the country where children were allowed to hold weapons with the breech out and it's unloaded and there's no round in the chamber, there's no magazine, so it's a shell. And we have photos of the children holding all of these weapons. Why there was never a concern about it? The point being is that there's a difference between possession and someone having a presentation. So if I have possession, means I have full control. I can use a weapon and I can shoot it. If it is that someone is just having there's a program, there's a caravan, and I'm not saying that's what happened in Kamuto. But my point being is that you can't just do that because it was Parasol Wari's children. But then are you telling me that all of the photos for all the years where where we have children holding there's a Defense Force caravan, Brigadier Alfonso will tell you, all the chiefs of defense staff, all children will be holding these firearms, whether it was M60, SMG, SLR, Uzis, Glocks, Galils, all of these different weapons they held and they used and they took photos. That was not a crime because there's a difference with familiarization to possession. And then likewise, in that situation, was the person in possession? Did they have access to use it? So all of these things come about. And then if someone knows that for a fact that I know that those children were holding a firearm and the firearm was a live firearm and they use it, come forward and give the evidence. But you take a photograph and then you say, well, this is not something to charge someone. It goes to the same thing again to the UNC fanatics. So when Keith Rowley spoke about he walked up with a beer, people say he should be arrested. How you could arrest a prime minister because he made a simple statement that could assist in reducing and trying to educate persons to show that sometimes you can slip. You will go back to which one Keith Rowley to arrest him for that? I'm aware of opposition senators that walk around exercising with their face masks off. Not one of us can say that you left your gate and you walk to your car with your mask on. Every one of us would have probably broken the law at one time or the other. It's the spirit of the law. So the Commissioner of Police job is not to try to arrest Keith Rowley or Kamala to please fanatics. It is to ensure you have to look at the law, you have to look at the spirit of the law, the intention to what it is, and to ascertain if it would be of value by moving forward.
Now, a friend of ours from St. Mary's is asking questions. He is somebody known to you, and he was in the Ministry of National Security apparatus when you were minister. He asked me to ask you, but you don't have to answer, right? Who were the range officers while they were in Kamuto? Saying that they were actually firing and not posing. But you don't have to answer because you couldn't know that.
The answer I will give is that. Yeah, exactly. And there's an investigation and there's a file. So how could I give? Why would I give information of the names of the persons who were there? There were persons from the Defense Force. There were persons from Special Branch. There were ministers that were there. That much I can say, but I would not in any way pinpoint matters like that and by giving names.
Okay, this person write a book. Okay, no, I can't read this book yet. Was there a rift caused? You need a break or anything? We are this over hour now. Do you need a break or we could go continue?
It's up to you. If you have to pay bills.
No, we could continue. If you need a break at all, just let me know. Was there a rift after Gary Griffith raided Stuart Young's ex-girlfriend's house in the West and found a quantity of drugs after that? Never did any more raids in the 1% or any higher class. That's
okay.
How buy it or sell it? That is how it was written.
All right. First thing, it was his ex-girlfriend's house. Secondly, the persons that were arrested were actually my family members. They were closer to me than Stuart Young. So I really didn't bother.
But they want to know if that precipitated the rift between you and the PNM.
Well, not with me. Only Stuart Young could answer that, and he needs to answer that. But I don't know if he did. People said the rift took place when it is that during Carnival and stuff, where several thousand people will want to take a photo with me and they'll be pelting him to the side when they'll be waving to me and he'll wave back and they'll say it's not you we waving to. So I don't know whether it is personality, egos, whatever is the reason. I think it is unfortunate. I will think that you will want who's the best person for the job. You will do what is required to protect because you have family members, you have loved ones, you have members of your constituency. You will think that I am not going to worry about ego and pride and who might be more popular than me and who might might be a political threat to me. You will think if you're a true politician, you will do what is right for the country. But sometimes we just don't get those sort of people that go up to be politicians.
When you referred to criminals in the underworld as cockroaches, of course, the PNM's noise machine grabbed cockroaches and tried to make it that you were referring to people of African descent. And I'm saying that to you because that's how their noise machine works. I'm dealing with that right now. Others have dealt with it, and we've seen it. You want to add anything to that at all, or do you think that that has been dealt with?
Yeah. Again, I always said I needed to apologize because cockroaches, when they go in your food and it can kill you. But the cockroaches do not do it deliberately to kill you. When a man deliberately takes a gun and points it to the head of your daughter or your loved one and kills you, they do it deliberately. So I do apologize to the cockroaches because these individuals, they are worse than cockroaches. And if anybody who is a PNM fanatic, they are so stupid to try to label that towards race. I do not care what color you are. If someone, Philip, if someone rapes your daughter, kidnaps your son, kills your wife, that person is a cockroach regardless of their color. And anybody who has a problem to say that that person will not be deemed a cockroach, you tell me the day someone kidnaps your son, rapes your daughter, or kills your wife, you will not say the same thing. So my point being is that
Always.
huh?
Always.
So anytime
They're being disingenuous. They're being disingenuous. And
but you see what
they're
they do,
trying to make it about race because you see, that is all they have. That dog whistle is all they have.
yeah, but people are not hearing it anymore because basically what they're trying to assume is that every single cold-blooded killer, kidnapper, or rapist is an Afro-Trinidadian, and it shows how PNM thinks about people who they believe are the majority of their base. The base does not, you do not need people of that ilk to try to speak to you in that manner, to refer to you as a killer, rapist, or kidnapper. So it shows that is that the type of party and leadership you want? My point was to show that we have cold-blooded killers, rapists, kidnappers out there, and for far too long, we have the scales of the criminal justice system have continued to support them rather than the law-abiding citizen. And it is time that we tilt the scales of justice towards the law-abiding citizens.
1 year. Friday is 1 year ago you all found Andrea. 1 year ago. This Friday is 1 year ago that you all found her body. Yesterday, a young lady named Kithisha Kujo, her body was found in almost the exact same location. What's going on in that report?
Well, again, it is not an isolated situation. As I mentioned, the homicide rate, there were so many things, Philip, that we did to try to peg it back. It was tough because illegal weapons still coming in because of the incompetence of the government to shut the illegal weapons entering. And as I said, nobody's going to put an OPP in Port Authority and put it on in the port to stop the illegal weapons are coming from the legitimate ports of entry. That was making it difficult for me. However, we put over 100 policies every year in my 3 years, and I could run out all 300. The tasers, the pepper spray, the body cameras, the online reporting, the operation command center, the commissioner's command center, the GPS tracking, the dashboard cameras on the police vehicles, the emergency response patrols, SWOT, the gender-based violence unit, training for police officers, improvement in DNA testing, forensic testing. All of these things played an instrumental part to reduce crime never before seen in the history of this country. From 140 less murders in the year before to 2020. In 2021, as I said, the first 7 months, we still cracked it. And I mean, people say, oh, what are you talking crack? But if you're looking at 540 murders, and now we move from 540 to 390, my first 7 months was going to 340 odd. So every year it was being reduced. As soon as I left, it is now going to 700 plus. And then when it is that the first way to try to solve a problem is to admit that there is a problem. But if it is you have an acting commissioner of police saying, no, there's not been a spike in crime, let's do trend analysis and this is the norm. And then you have a minister of national security saying that the majority of many of these murders are by domestic violence. There were 40 murders by domestic violence in 2020, 24 in 2021, out of 450, not to mention the 50 not classified. So you're looking at probably 500 murders last year. 24 by domestic violence, which is still 24 too many. But you say the majority. Fitzgerald, he went to school in August. How could 24 be the majority of 450? So they don't know how to solve the problem. They have done a lot now to diminish, dismantle, shut down many of the things that measured performance for police, made them accountable. And because of that, the high visibility, the rapid response, the deterrent has now gone, and the criminals are now seeing the opportunity to come back. And let me quickly add, the nonsense spoken by some, if you recall, the three people that we call criminologists, Ramesh Diosaran, King, and Daniel Figueroa, these fellas said that the reason why crime was reducing every year under Gary Griffith is not because of Gary Griffith, it was because of COVID. I didn't know COVID ended, Philip. Somebody has to tell me that. I didn't know COVID ended since I left because crime is going up. Where's the COVID problem? They said that it's because of COVID that criminals didn't want to rape and kill again. They then said it's because of the public health regulations, but there's still public health regulations. The same public health regulations we had all of 2020 that caused 140 less murders. The same regulations in the first 3 months in 2021 are the same regulations now, the same COVID now. But we have people who call themselves criminologists. Their job is to understand criminals, but we have our media keep going to them to try to understand law enforcement. They said that crime was going down, not because of Gary, but because of COVID and the health regulations. I really didn't know that COVID and the health regulations ended since I left office because the crime has now doubled.
Somebody's asking me a question. Again, some of these questions, I will read them to you. If it is something that you think you cannot answer, I will understand that, right? As an ex-commissioner of police, knowing what you know, is the justice system part of the problem?
Well, definitely. And this way it comes to our government having the strength to do what is right. I just mentioned the scales of justice is so tilted towards criminals. And again, we even look at the opposition. You saw it fit that if someone is held with a sidearm, they must get no bail for 120 days. As soon as you get in opposition, you're saying if a man has an assault rifle that can kill 35 persons in 3 seconds, that they should get bail. That is madness. And that is what we have to endure. We have a system now where young men could be incarcerated, stay in remand for over a decade and not have his day in court. And then likewise, you have persons who may have been politicians, who may be charged for major criminal activity. And for several years, his case would not even start. And that shows that the deterrent is no longer there. Does it show that there's a possibility that politicians have some influence in the justice system to make sure that their case will never be heard? Or we do not care about the average man in the street, that a mother's son could be in prison and for over a decade he cannot have his day in court, and then when he finally gets his day in court, he is not guilty. Where that 10, 12 years that he has lost, who's going to give him back? So obviously there must be a massive revamp. In 2010, as the National Security Advisor, I drafted the Ministry of Justice to deal with just that, to deal with the scales of justice, to stop the problem, first to make amendments to stop persons being incarcerated for so long, to stop cases just hanging there, and the persons in the suit and tie continue to speak to whoever to make sure that those cases will never start. Those are the things that should have been done. Having a proper system in that Ministry of Justice to have proper training for rehabilitation, because recidivism in our country is one of some of the highest in this part of the world. Instead, the person they put as the Minister of Justice asked if he dealt with any of those things. No. He spent his 2 or 3 years as the Minister of Justice trying to build more prisons. That was not the concept of the Ministry of Justice. I drafted it for the Prime Minister, showed her how it was to be done, what should have happened. I drafted the point of the GPS bracelets and how the GPS bracelets should be used. 12 years later, we're still working on the GPS bracelets. It was a simple and straightforward thing. And they misinterpreted it when Minister Dillon said that they will have a geofencing to make sure that the man will not go beyond somewhere. You can have a geofencing of 3 miles and be living in Laventille or Belmont or anywhere and commit a lot of crime. The value of the GPS bracelet was not for geofencing, was to ensure that if at any time there was a crime committed anywhere and somebody is murdered, you can know anybody with that GPS bracelet if they were at that scene of that crime at that specific time, and you can link them to the crime, which means that dead men can now talk. But this was beyond many persons in both governments, and we have totally drifted from the value of that GPS bracelet. So that is all part of why I drafted the Ministry of Justice for the People's Partnership. It was never used properly. When the new government came in, they threw it out. So they put the Minister of National Security to deal with the criminal justice system, to deal with prisons, to deal with the police service, to deal with national security, external security. It doesn't work that way. And especially a man like Fitzgerald Hines to deal with all that, well, Lord Father help me.
Robin Montano said in his blog, and he said on this show on Thursday night that when he was investigating it, he found that there were 12 drug lords in this country. He said there could be more now because he stopped years ago. People are asking, why aren't we arresting these big fish? What would you say?
As soon as any one of the people who say that bring evidence, we will do it. Because this is where Trinidad works on. So Robin Montano says 12. Why not 11? Why not 13? This is like the Scott drug report. You put a report, it is alleged, it is rumored, this person has said, and that becomes gospel. No, I'm not saying it's not true, but it serves no purpose. You have a Stanley John report, a well-oiled criminal industry. So you'll swear that hundreds of people are involved, so dozens should be arrested. Not one person convicted or charged as yet. This is what we love, the rum shop talk and the gossip. Oh, there are 12. Oh, so you're
How
called 12.
do you break down these big fish?
Well, the fact of the matter is, you could work it through the broken window theory, where it is you go after the smaller individual, and with the smaller individual, you hold him with a sidearm. You get that sidearm, but this way I could not have done it as the commissioner of police. We need the government to put policies in place in that, because the DPP's hands are also tied. Because when I spoke to the DPP and stuff, I said, listen, when you hold a man with cocaine, a handful of that could just hold in his hand, or a sidearm, he's a small fry in the dance. What we want is to find out, where did you get that sidearm? Who purchased it or who gave it to you? Then you hold that fella, and then you get him to sing and say who it is that you got that from, and then you go after the bigger fish. So it is called plea bargaining. We do not have a proper system. All that we do is go after the individual, we charge him, he then goes to the court. The court will then put him on $5,000 bail, being held with an illegal firearm. He then goes out there, commits a crime, kills somebody, or purchases another firearm to go back and continue his trade. No, you do the plea bargaining till you keep building and building. And listen, but the only way you can use plea bargaining is when you hold this small man with a sidearm at the corner, that he knows that, oh, I'm not going to say a word because I know I could get out tomorrow when I go to court, and the magistrate will say $5,000 bail. Have a nice day. You hold the person with the sidearm and you tell him you're not leaving for 120 days. And furthermore, when we find you guilty, you're going in for 10 years. If you want out, tell us who gave you the firearm, where you purchased it from. Then when you get that person, you find out who is the shipper, who is the person who's bringing it in. That, however, takes government policy to amend laws to allow plea bargaining, because the DPP can't do it. Because that's what I'm speaking about, is walking on a landmine. And our police didn't have that type of capability or the authorization to be able to give that plea bargaining. So when you catch a small man with some small drugs or weapons, you use that build-up to find the big. That is how you get the big fish. As a commissioner, I didn't have the authority to do that, because you need to have that authorization from government. This government ain't going to do it.
Did you investigate the claim that Andrea Barrett uncovered some sort of corruption involving deeds and bail in the Arima Magistrate Court?
Yeah, but obviously I can't make comments on matters that we investigated. Yeah, so I wouldn't be able to. So
there's no way for us to know if there was any value to that claim, or the woman that was.
Yeah, go ahead.
The woman that was found with belongings of Andrea, was she ever charged? A woman, they said that a woman was found with her phone and her shoes or something. But by then there was so much talk, I didn't know what was true or what was not. People carry on.
But while those matters were still being investigated, the government was busy witch hunting, trying to have me removed from office. So I kind of lost track of what went on with that investigation.
Please ask Gary what happened to the police that was on the video taking money from the DSS.
Well, that's still on investigation. I mean, let's go to that DSS thing, Philip. I mean, the fact is there are laws, and if there are certain laws, you have to adhere to the laws. When it is we found out police officers and members of the defense force being involved in something like this, and then what made it worse is when you seize the money, you have police officers in the station return millions of dollars to an individual without even checking the money. That is what I had to go through. So the police officers involved with DSS, police officers involved in the situation with the $100 million that I was able to cut in overtime racket, police officers involved in FUL corruption, they are smiling all the way to the bank because they wanted this. They knew Gary Griffith was stopping criminal enterprise in the police service. Now, it's a small percentage of police officers, mind you, very small, because I have worked with police officers around the world, and our police service is among the best in the world, which is why public confidence and trust moved from 14 to 44%. But the fact of the matter is that all of the rogue elements who Stanley John was able to contact and get information from and use that as a report without trying to get the other side of the story or facts. Because if he had facts, he would have provided evidence. You say there's a well-oiled criminal industry, but you've got no evidence, you have no witnesses, you have no documents, you have no data, you have no suspects. Well,
that's what I said today to at least one of the gentlemen around the table who was telling me that Gary need to shut up and wait until the report. I said, what you're not understanding is this. There is a 99.99% reality that report was never meant for any kind of investigation. It is just meant to destroy Gary's name. So that if Gary sits silent and allow these things, because they have a old saying, a lie told often enough becomes the truth. And in politics...
Yeah. That's the PNM propaganda. That is what they do. That is what they do.
And them sell 5 raffle ticket outside Price Mart and building a $500 million Balize house. They're very good at playing this game, you know. They have their people properly hoodwinked.
Yeah, you say the same lie over and over, people will believe it. And that's what they wanted. Because one of the things, if you notice what I do, I bring facts, I bring data, I bring logic, I bring points. The average person who wants to believe something, and when I bring this, they can't say it. They have kicked back to me, especially on social media. Why don't shut up? I say, well, boy, the 3 brain cells they use to come up with that valued top comment says a lot, because they can't compete with facts and logic. What they have to work on is the rum shop talk and the gossip and hope that if you throw enough mud on someone's white shirt, it's going to stick.
Okay, so this person pressing his point, he said, that was not my question. I asked why they taking poor people money, as he said. This is a back to the DSS question. There was this video. You can't.
No, I could, because they take any poor people money. I mean, I do not know how people, do you not count? Philip, if you take 10,000 from me and 10,000 from you, and you take it from 10 other people, but you get 100,000, 9% would have lost 10,000 each for you to get 100,000. That is greed. The same thing that speak about the poor black man, yet we cause them to suffer. It is for every one person that gets 10 times more than what he had that he invested. It means 9 poor black men would have lost their deposit to benefit you. That is what is called a pyramid. That is why these things have collapsed all over the world. Because if you get 10 times your return, if I put 1,000, it is not like a susu. A susu is, I put 1,000, I get 10,000, but for the next 10 months, I will be putting 1,000 and I get nothing. So the susu is what you put is what you get back. This thing is telling you, if you give me $1,000, I will give you 10,000. If you give me 10,000, I'll give you 100. It means that 9 other persons would have lost their deposit because it keeps spreading. And when it keeps spreading,
was that a straight up pyramid, or was there other? But people were saying that I was hearing, and again, I'm just giving you hearsay, but I was hearing that they were also using it as a money laundering enterprise. You heard anything like that?
There are many other things in that obviously I can't speak about, but the concept of it was a pyramid, and there are many other things that are being investigated on it. But when it is you have 23 million seized from someone, and then the commissioner of police, because this was happening whilst I was in a Comstat meeting, I have my intelligence units, because just about 2 streets from the station, it was going on with hundreds of people outside the house, and the station didn't know what was going on, they claimed. But then, so when we seize it, and so took it and carried it to the station, a senior officer gives the authorization to have it sent back to the individual. When you see something, you have to check it. You have to make sure none is counterfeit. You have to do, none of that was done. But this was all deliberate. This was all part, and those are the things that I had to deal with to weed out the rogue elements in the police service, measure their performance, make them accountable, make them visible, make sure that they will not be abusing their authority with police vehicles. Some officers did not want that. They wanted to get back to run their racket, run their business, run their FUL things, and they used Stanley John well by giving him the information that they wanted to have printed.
And you sue the Express?
No, because it was a report. What I can't sue is the individual.
So that report being leaked without any due process. Isn't that defamation?
Not to the newspaper, because it is a report they got. It's a bona fide report. What could happen is the individual who made the allegation, and by leaking it to the NSC, action could be taken on him now. Because if you make those damning allegations, you better come now and prove it. And trust me, he is going to have his time very soon to have to prove it.
Man who owned the whole house photographed with the AG, how he get his gun license? As a buy it or sell it, As a buy it or sell it.
But listen, it's 6,000 firearms that were issued. I really can't remember who was the man who owned a whole house. That I don't put that.
The man asked me the question twice. He say, ask him the question. All right. We answered that one about the acting cop never being on the merit list. Somebody said, a couple of people asked this question. The last time you were on this show, you said that you had some information that if you put it in the public space, it might cause a snap election.
Yeah, there's a lot I have. There's a lot. I may have information, just say, of who is a very senior government official who ordered Blissy Prasad to remove the merit list, and that can be deemed as misbehavior in office. Blissy Prasad by trying to suspend a sitting commissioner of police, that is sedition. Blissy Prasad by misleading the PSC and trying to tell them that Gary was interfering with an investigation when it proved to be a lie, that is misbehavior in office. There may be situations where government officials were trying to harass me and intimidate me to arrest opposition members of parliament. I could go on, and eventually the time will come when I would say a lot.
Plenty on that. Somebody just asked me a question about somebody who disagreed with you on the permits was transferred after 7 weeks. According to our paid news source. Well, all right. That tells me what it is.
There you go. Look what you're talking about. And that is the point. When it is we had police officers, and through my units and intelligence, we pinpointed certain officers who were somehow just misplacing files, losing files, hiding files just coming up to the top of the heap without, after some persons applied just for a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, we will move them. And by me moving them, it affected them. It affected big business. And because of that, they knew that they had to whisper to the right persons, even politically, to try to have me removed because I was affecting a multi-million-dollar racket.
You were commissioner for how long?
3 years.
Somebody just asked me a question, so I'm going to ask you. But I know because I've had Vernon De Lima repeatedly on this show to speak about the justice system, and he talks about people have been incarcerated, charged and incarcerated for 10, 15, 20 years. You just mentioned something, but somebody wants to ask me this. Who was actually arrested, incarcerated, found guilty under your watch? Now, you're not responsible, and I know that, for the prosecutorial arm of the state.
Yeah.
So, but that is the question. Was any...
That's a senseless question. If there are thousands of persons arrested every year, how would I have the data to know how many of them would have been found guilty? Hold on, let me give a crystal ball and just pull that out here. Come now.
You want to know what big wig?
That's the courts to decide. That's the courts to decide if the persons are found guilty. And if it is that some of these cases go on for years.
I want to say the person because I know he's watching, right? And I understand the point he's trying to make. But you see, and you brought this on yourself. Because you promised to deliver so much, and because your first 6 months and first year, you were going after so many things that you set the bar and the standard high for yourself. What a lot of people don't understand is issues like where directions from the DPP to arrest come from in certain cases and stuff like that. And I have found that you've never given enough information on that, or why the Anti-Corruption Bureau was under the Attorney General to begin with. Things like that. And those things, I think you should have put a lot more effort into clarifying. Because people think the police, as Commissioner of Police, that you could have just go and lock up the Prime Minister. They don't understand that there are legal steps.
Yeah, well, to clarify that, the ACIB, I was the one who amended it. I spoke to the Attorney General. It was brought back under the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. There are many things that I would have loved to change. again, banana republic mentality. We have a special branch that reports directly to the prime minister. How could that be in our country? How could you have a unit report directly to politicians? That is a dangerous situation, but Eric Williams started that. And every government that got in refused to change it. So you could have people, it's still like that. So you have officers in the special branch who could be political, and their job entails going to every single opposition political meeting and put a report to brief the prime minister of what Philip Alexander, Kamala Prasad Bissessar, David Abdullah says in the meeting. I can't do anything about it because that is a mandate.
But are they police officers?
Huh?
Are they police officers, and do they come under the commissioner of police?
Yeah, serving police officers. But how it is structured, the special branch sends reports directly to the prime minister without any input or knowledge of the commissioner of police.
This is a very important question somebody's asking here, and I have to ask you. Are you a member of the Progressive Empowerment Party? And if not, how soon will you be joining?
I was wondering when somebody will ask that question. Why did you ask if I'm a member of the PNM or a member of the UNC? Why did always that every time I come on your show to ask
because
that?
While you were nationally transforming your movement just now, I thought I would bring a little prop of my own.
But I am, in fact, let me be honest. I wish to let the country know, yes, I am a PEP. I am a PEP. I'm a politically exposed person. So if I have to go to the bank, I have to submit all of my files at all times.
How can they ask me, are you a PEPS? How would you know that? Just by I didn't know that. Anyway, but I want to say to you, because a lot of the questions are repetitive and some of the stuff that we addressed earlier. And I know that Trinidadians, and they're starving for this. So when you open the door a little bit and give them a public official at that higher level, commissioner of police, willing to answer their questions, there's nobody else. When they get a press conference on public health, the foolishness that they are handed, Trinidadians are watching the lies in front of them and knowing it not adding up. You have a lot of people who have access to social media and WhatsApp, and you can't lie anymore. You can't get your lies out as far as you thought, and the people have few people to turn to that they could ask questions of and get answers. Do some more forums like this, tell Rhoda and them get bored. To make the information, but as soon as you can do, the information that you promised to make certain people's lives difficult. They want that information. People goading you for that. Trinidadians want their popcorn moment, you know. They want to sit down and eat popcorn and watch you fight Rowley. That's what they want.
Yep. Well, they better be careful what they ask for. They might very well get it very soon.
So I get both, right? Mr. Phillip, the answer is respectful BS. Please keep your integrity. The public Gary is a politician by trade. I am watching you, sir. Now, yes, get both for your answer on the snap election and the information that you have. Again.
No, but everything is timing. I mean, I have to know when to say it, how to say it, but it would be said. And I could tell the public, though, to give a bigger hint, that was the main reason why I was removed from when they did not want me back, because they realized that I'm an independent commissioner of police and I was not going to sit idly by if politicians try to influence and harass me to appoint specific persons to be in charge of the unit that will intercept your phone. I was not going to be intimidated or harassed if it is that you want to try to move to fast track investigations for specific purposes. I can't operate like that. I have to be very impartial. But again, that's the way our country runs. Marlene McDonald was charged. You see, Gary Griffith was always a Kamala boy. He licking up the PNM. Anand Ramlogan or somebody is charged. You see, that's it. He's singing for his supper. He's a PNM puppet. We always see everything with red and yellow. And that is, I could not operate like that. We need to have governance and persons in government. When I became Minister of National Security, in fact, I resigned as a member of the UNC because I believe that you need to be as independent and impartial as possible to be a security minister and even an attorney general. And even as a prime minister, you're supposed to put all of your political banners and so forth in a box for 5 years and forget the politics. Just do what is right and the votes will come. The day politicians and political parties do that, you will see a difference in this country. But everything is about the politics. Let's see if we could lick up that one throat. Let's see if we could try to get him arrested. Let's see. And they spend more time. You look at both major political parties, they spend more time attacking each other than what they can do to help the country, which is where it is that we need a third constituency of independent thinkers to do what is right for the country.
Absolutely. Do you think, and I am asking this question, because you and I have had this conversation before, do you think that what is taking place in our prisons and our justice system is a human rights atrocity? There is a man messaging me right now, and he's saying a member of his family is in prison 12 years waiting on a day in court. Do you think that is a human rights atrocity? That people are arrested and charged, people who can't make bail or who can't afford lawyers, who are in jail 2 and 3 times longer than they would have been if they were convicted of the offense?
Of course, Philip, and no government has taken control of it. When going back to 2010, I drafted the Ministry of Justice specifically as a ministry to deal with this, where it is that persons were going in there for a minor offense and they were coming out as hardened criminals because of poor rehabilitation, high recidivism. Persons there for decades, for over a decade, and they're not even having their day in court. And then, as I mentioned, politicians and persons in shirt and tie being charged, and for several years the case cannot start. That cannot be right in any country, and no government has taken full control. I've drafted the Ministry of Justice to do just that, and the Minister of Justice, he spent all his time trying to build prisons.
Is there any way that you and I and people like us, without political power, is there any way that we could challenge that? Force the government?
The only way it could be done is to get in government. The only way. And again, this way I think
a case-by-case review. That would require a case-by-case judicial review.
Well, no, but again, if it is you look at all of these matters, it is not rocket science. We have to you look at what is done in best practice around the world. You can't tell me a man is holding for over a decade and he cannot get his case heard. You can't tell me that someone is held with an assault rifle when some countries that is terrorism. And in this country, you're telling him he has a right to get bail. And we have a law association, by the way, in a situation that made Section 34 look like a tea party. We have a president that refused to adhere to the law. We have a PSC chairman that did not adhere to the law. We have government officials breaching their oath in office and being involved in misbehavior. And the law association has not said a word. And it shows the problem because of political interference and affiliation of all institutions in this country. The only way it could be changed is if you have a government that is willing to get into government and diminish their powers as a government. Because what I have been fed up, Phillip, with all of the chambers and all of these people, Gary, keep saying what you're saying. This is unacceptable. But they're not saying a word. Why not saying a word? Well, I have to keep my contract. It is amazing. I have tens of thousands of silent partners that they do not want to talk about business chambers, associations. It's amazing.
I tell people the best name for a political party is behind the scenes. Everybody wants to join behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Brother, a lot of these questions, again, we've answered them before. They're just trying to twist it. Somebody just asked me, where do you see our country in the next 5 to 10 years? And I want to phrase that differently. Where do you see our country in the next 5 to 10 years if there is no political change? And where do you see it in 5 to 10 years if we are successful in bringing real political change?
Well, obviously, as what we have seen right now in the country, there's never been so much civil disobedience. We've never seen this before. Even in 2010, before that general election, we are seeing disenchantment. We are seeing people fed up, frustrated. They're perceiving this as probably the worst government this country has ever seen. And basically, the government is going to change. What happened in Tobago wasn't by fluke. The whole of Trinidad is picking up the same thing. There's a tsunami of distrust, disgust, and disrespect for the government. So there's a fact. What is going to happen then is the question. So there's not a question of if the government is going to change. It is going to happen. But is it going to be Animal Farm, where what happened in 2010, you sat back, you did nothing, and then it just became a regurgitation of the same problem, and in 2015, the same thing that you threw out, you bring back. We can't keep making the same mistakes over and over and expect different results. We need to make sure that in 2025 or before, because I honestly cannot see this continue until 2025, the disenchantment we are seeing here in this country. I honestly believe that you need to find a government, and they must have a contractual obligation to make promises to say that we will change to ensure that the president is not appointed by the government. The Speaker of the House and the Senate cannot be. A commissioner of police must have the input of the public's view as to who is appointed. We need to make sure that we put something as a contractual obligation, not like what happened with the People's Partnership, and you blow the trumpet of a 2-term maximum and the right for recall, and you never did a thing. You never did a thing. All you did was to deliberately form a law called the runoff bill in the hope that if you thought that the COP was going to reignite, and third party, and they split the votes to some extent that caused the PNM to win some marginal seats, it gives you the right to say, well, you didn't get 50%, so that in the runoff, we'll throw away the third party voters, and now they will come and join us because they like us more than the PNM. That is not the type of governance we need.
They sent Prakash Ramada on a 5-year frolic. And I've always said that to Prakash. That whole constitutional reform jaunt, when they knew full and well the things they promised, fixed election date, referendum, recall, those things, those laws exist in the Commonwealth. We copy and paste laws all the time. Why we couldn't copy and paste those? Why we couldn't treat those? But again, people think that is either ketchup or mustard, and some people need to learn. And you spoke about this earlier. And I want to say the number that you forgot to add is more than 50% of the people don't take part in the electoral process at all. The last election, we had about 50% of the people that didn't vote in was not present in the election, and while a large portion of them could very well be people who don't care, I think a lot of people don't care because they're not excited to vote. They're not excited by something. But every now and then, they will hear or see that good people talking and getting together and something might be happening, give them something to hope for. I think that's what Trinidad looking for more than anything right now, something to believe in.
Yeah, and I think what the country needs, I mean, even unless you're the PNM till a dead fanatic or the UNC, and again, there are 100,000 either side that regardless of what, right? You could put Barack Obama for the UNC in Lavantil, you're going to lose his deposit. You could put the Pope in for the PNM in Carney, and they're going to lose. So some people, regardless of what they're stuck to it. That's fine, that happens. But I think right now we have that 300,000 plus, that pendulum. The people are not a PNM till they're not born a UNC and have a die a UNC. And again, with younger persons, where has it happened? Probably in our era, Phillip, where our parents will tell us who to vote for. That was the bulk. That is not happening again. They are independent thinkers, whether it's Afro-Trinidadian, Indo-Trinidadian, regardless of religion, race, geographical location. They are making decisions based on the policies. The young persons now, they don't want to hear political meetings and rallies where they're going to have the Shiv Shakti dancers and this man performing, and you have this massive stage, and then you have the secretary of the party paying you $100 to go in a maxi, and you're filling up the maxi, and then you put in a drone on top. The days of that over. Social media, which these two political parties presently lack in understanding the power of social media. A young person, he has his earphones on, listening to something. He said, what is that guy just said? What Phillip just said? Hey, that makes sense. I like his style. And he moves on. So whilst they're staying behind the 8-ball, working on old-time politics of the 80s and 90s, there's a new era out there with persons from 18 to 33 that never had a choice of a third party, because the last time there was an option was in 2007. So I'm 15 to 18 years old. A 33-year-old only knew up to either PNM or UNC. The time is right now for a third constituency of independent thinkers to come forward and do what is right for this country. And this is not in any way to write off the PNM or the UNC. Both parties have played a very powerful part towards the development of this country. They've also played a part towards the destruction of the country. So I think so it's not my job is not to come and try to destroy what the PNM and the UNC have done for us. What I'm speaking about is the future, and I do not think the future is us being so caught up in the web of, I don't care what you say, Kid Rowley right, and I don't care what you say, Kamala is correct. That is not the way to. When you make decisions like that, it certainly cannot help you. It cannot help your family. It cannot help your country.
Do you think the days of tribal voting, race voting is behind us?
No, of course not. It will stay, but it is not going to be the catalyst anymore. There's going to be there's a time, and that time is now. And if we deal with this carefully, I tell you, you're seeing it. When it is you have these movements that took place around Queen's Park Savannah recently, that was no Indo-Trinidadian that UNC shipped, That is the same tribal thing when they try to speak about the Afro-Trinidadians are controlled by the PNM. Not anymore. Look at that, what took place there. And then, as I said, going back to that incident, I, as a commissioner of police, as a previous commissioner, I could not believe what I saw. I have been trained in dealing with law enforcement as it pertains to crowd control and riot control, from working in England with the IRA, being in Haiti in the UN peacekeeping, even involved in the attempted coup. And that was unbelievable. You had hundreds of people for hours, the numbers dwindled, you had a smaller amount, and then you used tear gas. Why it is you didn't use tear gas for Abu Bakr's funeral? Why didn't you use tear gas when they had the Beaton riot? It gives the perception that there was political interference. And you would have noticed my style, I give people the right to protest, because when you don't do that and you suffocate them, it can become worse, such as Phillip Alexander and others during the candlelight vigil. I understood the concern, people were hurting, and we had to give them the opportunity, whilst I had to keep it under control as much as possible, similar to the Black Lives Matter movement in the Queen's Park Savannah. I didn't go tear gassing people. What I did, however, and then when it is that we have the PNM till it dead, but Gary, you used tear gas in 2020. In 2020, 150 persons were coming into Port of Spain with Molotov cocktail, weapons, bricks, pieces of iron to destroy the city. I put the tear gas 100 meters before they arrived for them to veer off, to divert, so they wouldn't have confrontation with the police and destroy the city. My operation worked without a flaw, without any assistance from any other arm of the protective services. And in some countries, a commissioner will get a medal for what I achieved. And people are trying to compare that to you using tear gas on children, elderly persons, members of the media, and innocent bystanders. Unbelievable.
Gary, I can't believe 2 hours has flown so fast, but I have to tell you, thank you very much for coming on. And I think you answered a lot of the questions that the people had. You again, you put new ones in the public space that will have to be answered in the future, now politically. So, but I want to tell you, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for taking the questions. Thanks a lot for being here. I'll give you the opportunity to give us any closing comments.
I just want to tell the country, let us believe. Let us actually believe we can turn this around. This nonsense, I hate when people say, Trinidad is not a real place. Of course it's a real place. It is a good country with good people. We just have bad leadership. There's a void in leadership. And probably people will always be jealous because of my actions. They will be affected by it, because I am someone, I'm not a test cricket leader. I don't stay in my crease like Chanderpaul for the whole day and then make 20 runs and then but I will be not out. No, I am an ODI, if not a T20. I will step on my crease. I will do what is required. Toes may be stepped on, and that is the way I am. That is the style but that is the type of leadership we want. We want people to be dynamic, to be adventurous, to be independent, to make sure you make clinical decisions, not reckless, but you can't sit down and do the same thing and expect different results. We have seen the Minister of Finance make a total disaster of this country, which is fiscal policies. We have seen the disasters of how we deal with our national sportsmen. We've seen how we have dealt with national security by putting probably the most incompetent Minister of National Security in that post at this time. We have seen how we have dealt with it. I ask the country that we can do this, but trust, have faith, have belief. We can make Trinidad and Tobago safe again.
That was former Commissioner of Police, former Minister of National Security, Gary Griffith. Thank you very much, Gary. And in closing, we need to remind you that if you need transport to the public meeting being held on Saturday in Daybase South, keep watching these pages. You could take a number 7968172, and you could send a WhatsApp to that number 7968172, and we'll continue to update you. Of course, my number is 6822110. Gary Griffith and others like him represent hope and change away from the politics of bacchanal and noise. Gary Griffith and anyone who's a change agent and anyone who wants to stand against the established order can be a polarizing figure. I know this well. But we are not going to get Trinidad and Tobago to be the Trinidad and Tobago that we want if we continue to do business as usual. It's just not going to make any sense at all. There are a lot of good people in this country, a lot of good people politically. And I have noticed that the ease with which we are set at each other's throats, I think that has to stop. And a lot of us have to grow up, myself included. And Gary mentioned that, and I agree, that we need to grow past the politics of dissent. We need to find all of the ways in which we agree, the points that matter to the average person, to the country. Where we go here from here as a nation will be determined by what we all do as individuals and as a people. There are many good, strong voices. There are many good, strong minds. There are many good, strong brands. And we need to work together. And we need to be open to the politics of inclusion. But we also need to learn from the mistakes of the past. And planning for the wedding and forgetting the marriage is the stupidest mistake to make of all. And as we've seen that happen with the People's Partnership and the National Alliance for Reconstruction and the ease with which they could break, then we need to make sure that anything that we do going forward in the future politically that we want to make a substantial change in Trinidad and Tobago, we need to make sure that the work we do in the groundwork is now. And PNM and Keith Rowley could call snap election till he tired. I want to tell you something. They are irrelevant. They know they are politically irrelevant. They've lost everything. The governments gave the country ultimatums on furlough. Governments gave the country ultimatums on public servants vaccination. Government gave the country ultimatum on property tax. And they've lost every single one. This government is ignored. Colm Imbert is a joke. Fitzgerald Hines is a punchline. Keith Rowley is a lame duck prime minister, walking wounded. He is politically dead. There is not one person in the PNM that is respected, and across the aisle, the UNC fares no better. Kamla Persad-Bissessar is too weak to fight a broken and dead government. What does that tell you? What does that say? What does that say? The last best voice in the UNC, Rudal Monilal, is marginalized. Stanley John is silenced. What does that tell you? What's going on in the opposition? They're foisting people on you, having Monday night forums and Tuesday nights gatherings and Sunday morning press conferences, and they're preaching to the choir. Nobody's taking them on. I drop in from time to time to just note that there are 15 or 16 people on social media watching them at any given time on every night. We cross 1,000 people on our social media platforms every night. I wonder all the time how people don't get tired of seeing me or hearing us. But it's just that people are fed up of the politics of bacchanal and noise. They're fed up of it. They're fed up here Kamala accuse Rowley of what Rowley accusing Kamala. And if you are a diehard member of those parties, if you say that you support Keith Rowley, think of this. If Keith Rowley was the UNC candidate for Diego Martin West, he would have lost. If Kamla Persad-Bissessar was the PNM candidate for Siparia, she would have lost. If Faris Al-Rawi was the UNC candidate for San Fernando West, he'd have lost. Rudal Monilal, as a PNM candidate, loses Oropouche West or Oropouche East, or whichever one he is. But the point I'm trying to make is this. Even these people that are held up as lords and people to follow in their parties have no currency, have no substance. And if they step out of those parties, they are useless, weak, and broken. So where do we go from here? We, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, need to go from here to a place where the people that we put in public office understand the role of public office and understand that we are to be servants who lead and leaders who serve. Many of us have been fighting outside of the established order, taking the victimization and the threats. We're not behind the scenes. We're not trying to avoid it. We're standing. We're going into the fire when the building is on fire. We are the people that represent the chances of any kind of hope. On Monday, the 7th of February, there is an election in Debe South. We, the Progressive Empowerment Party, has a candidate. And if the people of Debe South does what the people of Tobago did, it will start a political earthquake throughout this country. And I hope that you do. We, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, deserve a lot better. Thank you all for viewing. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.